meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Planning Committee. No, don't do that. I'm going to be glad when I don't sit next to you. Meeting. All are present. Ms. Pierce is here in the place of Ms. Haskew. So, this is... Oh. It is now time for public comment. Let's control. Geez, maybe I will. Any person in the audience who wishes to make a comment on any item not on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, we will move on to the approval of minutes. Moved by Hudson, second by Abelson, I believe. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. Motion carries. And then don't be so quick because we're going to spread the love around. The consent calendar. Mr. Romick, did you want to make a motion? Yeah, I did. And I bet Ms. Pierce wants to second that. So any further discussion? All in favor, please say
aye. No.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. Motion carries. We will move on to the regular agenda items, and Mr. Engelman is going to talk to us about approving to issue the annual Urban Limit Line Policy Advisory Letter.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Martin Engelman, Deputy Executive Director for Planning. It's that time of year again when we send out this letter regarding the urban limit line. And we, through previous authority policy, decided that it'd be a good thing to let the jurisdictions know that we're available to help them out if they are contemplating a change in their urban limit line and wondering whether or not that would cause any kind of issue with compliance with the growth management program. And as you know, the urban limit line is a requirement of Measure J, and each local jurisdiction has a voter-approved urban limit line. They've either adopted the county's voter-approved urban limit line, or they have an individual urban limit line for their own jurisdiction, their own city. And so with this letter, we're simply informing the local jurisdictions we're here to help, and if they have a question, feel free to write us, and we will reply with an advisory letter. You may recall a couple of months ago we sent such a letter to the city of Martinez, and they were inquiring as to whether annexation of less than 30 acres would become an issue, and we advised them on that matter. So you're simply authorizing release of the ULL letter, and a draft of that is attached in your packet.
Thank you. When I saw this, it's obviously a requirement to do. Do you have to have board authority? Can it just be an administrative action? I mean,
it's a perfunctory action, but we, as staff, decided it'd be good to give it some visibility.
I see.
We don't want to forget to do it, and we want to remind you that we do it. And also, if issues arise, you, of course, have the flexibility to modify the letter.
And or to say to cities, we told you so.
Yeah, and they actually have to acknowledge receipt of this letter in their checklist.
No, I get that.
The checklist and the checklist cycle's beginning. So I think it's good to give it, as staff, we believe it's good to give it some visibility rather than just have it be a perfunctory matter. So we bring it to you. If you don't wish for us to bring it to you in the future, we can stop doing that.
Well, no, I'm just one person. I was just asking a question. Any comments?
This is a little off normal, but this is a letter that's just going to jurisdictions, not to people in the jurisdictions.
That's correct. It's going to the city manager and the staff of the jurisdictions.
Okay.
And the mayor, right?
But I had an innocuous letter like this that I signed about this time of the year, and it dragged on and went out in October in an election year. The next thing you know, we were hearing from FPPC. That's why I'm asking. Because I don't know if Tom is running or if they have a primary or anything like this. But if you send out anything with their signature on it, it gets strange. But it sounds okay. I'm fine with it. Just was asking. I learned my lesson.
You guys in San Ramon have more problems than the rest of us, I guess.
You'll find out if you do it.
This is just seeking direction. Did we need a motion?
Just do it.
Thank you. And so moved by Pierce, seconded by Romick. All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. All right, we're going to move on now to the draft results of the 2017 Congestion Management Program. And who gets to do this? Mr. Kelly. Hi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Happy New Year. Matt Kelly with the authority. And yes, I have the results from our 2017 level of service monitoring. This is required by the Congestion Management Program legislation. You did adopt our CMP last year, or this past year, and this last month in December. As I mentioned then, this is one of the requirements the monitoring is something we really take advantage of through the CMP. And I'm going to present the results tonight. So as I mentioned, it's required to monitor the system every 2 years. Just a little background on the locations we monitor. We established a network back in 1991. The network is composed of all the state-maintained freeway systems and principal arterials. And included in those arterials are some state-maintained highways, such as San Pablo Avenue. In order to be part of the network, the road must be 4 lanes or wider for at least a mile. Average daily traffic must be over 20,000 cars. And the roadway must be designated as a route of regional significance by the local RTPC. On the arterials, we determine the performance of that arterial by the intersection level of service. And we identify those intersections. It has to be an intersection on the network. It can be an intersection of 2 routes, including ramp locations, or somewhere else on the network where there wasn't an easily monitorable intersection. But we've always monitored the actual intersections. So this is a map of the network. The dots are the 65 intersections that we monitor, and then the lines are the freeways, 95 miles of freeways. We have methodology that is recommended for all traffic studies done in the county, and that is that monitoring only be done on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. No construction, no bad weather, which here is rain, not like Florida where they get snow, and schools must be in session. For data, we use turning movements at the intersection, and that is collected by, in the past it's been mostly people sitting in an intersection, punching buttons or making hash marks, but now it's mostly done by mounted cameras on a pole, and they either take the recorded material back to the office and count it, or there are now cameras out there that actually do the counting for them, and that's called MyoVision. At intersections, we also have started collecting bike and ped counts, and so we have a lot of data at the intersections. The freeway speed is using big data, a company called INRIX, and that data was purchased by MTC a few years back and made available to the CMAs for their CMP monitoring. Okay, so before I show you the actual results, I just want to show you overall employment this is Alameda and Contra Costa counties, and then overall delay kind of summarized for the 2 counties. The blue line is employment. You can see it's been going up and up and up, and traffic or delay in the red is tracked at almost exactly. So where we've got a good economy, we've got traffic. You guys have probably come to understand that by now, but this just hammers that point home.
Matt, before you move on,
Yeah.
So I'm looking at July of 16,
Yeah.
the delay, and I get what you're saying. This is over all of those 65 points, although you said this is Alameda County too. So do we have any idea what happened in July of 2016?
Yeah, I would say summer.
July of 15, it's much closer together. That's why I'm asking. School's out, so the traffic should be, the delay should be lessened, not greater. Or is it going down better?
Yes, going down is
Oh,
where there
okay.
is little congestion.
I'm sorry.
Or less congestion.
No, that's a good question.
No,
About the same level on the low points for every summer.
no, and that's fine, but when you see this, it looks like that means bad, when it really
Right.
means good.
Right.
Maybe it's just how my brain works, but,
If you're in the traffic business, up is good. But if you're on the highways, up is not as good.
no, but we want that dotted red line to be down farther.
Exactly.
And so again, now we're going to be going into July of 2017, and it's down. But there was a big sort of swoop down at the beginning of last year, it looks like. That, well, July
Yeah.
14. Anyway, okay, that answers my
Yeah, from this, it's hard to tell exactly which month. But yeah, we do see fluctuations throughout the year, but the biggest spike generally comes in September, October. So this is just a summary of the level of service on those 95 miles of freeways. Level of service A is basically free flow speeds. There's a little chart over here on the right that shows you the breakdown by speed, how we get to the score. Level of service F is, some would say, crawling, less than 30 miles per hour. And you can see we do have, a fair amount at E or F, which most would consider bad traffic. But the majority of the county is at A and B. But we've got a lot of, freeway miles that aren't in congested locations. It's just the congested locations really add up. And people remember them. So, like I said, we monitored 95 miles of freeways. Those were divided into 23 segments. In the AM peak hour, 21 of those met their level of service standard. All roadways and intersections have a standard, usually E or F. So in the AM, 21 achieved the standard, 2 did not. In the PM, 20 achieved the standard, 3 did not. So the 5 listed below are the 5 that did not meet the standard. I'm sure they'll all make sense to you. State Route 24 in the AM westbound, basically from 680 through Lafayette. We saw that one in 2015. I-580, the westbound Richmond-San Rafael Bridge approach, that was a new one this year. State Route 4 in the PM, that area between 242 and Morello Avenue, basically. That's been a repeat offender. State Route 24 in the PM, coming back from Oakland and San Francisco, from the county line to Orinda, basically. And that backup does extend beyond the county line well into
Okay,
Oakland.
again, the brain isn't working. If
Okay.
you're going eastbound in Alameda County,
That's from the Contra Costa Alameda County line, like the Caldecott Tunnel, basically,
oh, okay, all right.
coming into Orinda.
I'm thinking down on 580, and I'm thinking, how the heck? Okay, so it's the tunnel to Camino Pablo, all right.
Correct. And then 242, the entire length of the entire freeway in the northbound direction in the PM, and that's a new one. And here's a map of those locations circled in blue, AM here and PM here. And so when we have these areas where thresholds are exceeded, we have to address that. What we do is we first identify these exceedances, which we've already done through our biannual monitoring. A second step is that we recount each of those locations 2 additional times to confirm the exceedance. And we use our big data for that. We pick different time periods and basically confirm that exceedance. Step 3 is to conduct an exclusion study. We are allowed to exclude certain types of traffic which were identified in the CMP legislation. Those are interregional travel, construction and maintenance impacts, areas where there's ramp metering, areas where there's traffic signal coordination, and that's basically to make sure that upstream and downstream signals aren't impacting this one intersection, so basically retiming could address that. Traffic generated by low and very low income housing and high density residential or mixed use development located near a rail station.
Okay,
So
now-
all those types of traffic we can exclude.
All right. Why would you exclude low and very low income housing? Is it the concept that it's just generating a ton of traffic?
That, I believe, is what the legislation was based on, and that communities are required to provide that type of housing.
No, I get that, but that doesn't mean that they're any busy. It's just amazing to me. Okay, and then interregional travel, that's what most of our people do.
And that's why we will probably not, and have never had to get to step 4, which is a deficiency plan, which is a big study where you have to identify all the offenders, all the offending cities, form a committee, do a giant study. So yeah, so we are able, especially where we're located in the Bay Area, to exclude a lot of traffic based on that first one, interregional
But do we
travel.
have to exclude that traffic? Where I'm going, Matt, is I don't know that low and very low income housing, other than around transit areas, is generating that much traffic that we'd want to exclude it. I mean, why would we want to, maybe in like a San Francisco, but that just doesn't make sense. I mean, I know we're allowed to, but do we have to?
I don't. Well, I mean, the goal is to not have to prepare a deficiency study. So we want to count as many of these as possible, I guess is the.
I guess where I'm also going is we as electeds get criticized for poor and incorrect assumptions on who are low and very low income housing residents. And for the public to see that, oh, but we get to exclude them when the public thinks it's bad anyway, sends the wrong message. So what I'm hearing you say is of those 6 issues, we're okay on all of them, so we don't have to prepare a deficiency plan.
Right, a combination of the 6. But, probably interregional travel would provide most of the reductions that would get us.
Yeah, but people go to Alameda and San Francisco to work, and so those are the people that are complaining about too much traffic on the road. So,
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
yes.
this is out of the CMP legislation.
No, I get that.
So we are required to do an exclusion study. We are required to subtract out these kinds of traffic. And I think the reason that's in the legislation is it's similar to the CEQA exemption for transit-oriented development. The idea was that the legislature did not want to give anybody the impression that they'd be penalized for
Absolutely.
building low-income housing. So,
But
if
that's
it
an
does create-
incentive.
If it does create traffic, then we would subtract it out. And
That just makes more sense to me than focusing on low, and I get that it's in the legislation, but it doesn't help all of us who are trying to convince our public that we need to continue building low and very low income housing. Sorry, and anyway.
No, I mean, that does make sense. And, we also use the action plans to address some of these issues, but I will, in just a second, get into some ways we're trying to address it through improvements. This is a look at where incidents are, a heat map of incidents, accidents and so forth. And basically, these overlay the areas of congestion where we've got level of service E and F on the freeway. And whether it's incidents causing the congestion or congestion causing incidents, that they go hand in hand. So now intersections, we have 65 intersections around the county. You'll see that 63 are achieving their standard. One is currently, in each the AM and PM is being reported as not achieving its standard. And it's the one listed there, San Pablo Avenue at John Muir Parkway and the State Route 4 ramps. That came out as level of service F, both in the AM and PM. And we've been going back and forth with Caltrans on getting the latest data. We don't think they're giving us their latest data, so our analysis is coming out wrong. So we're still working on that. And City of Hercules has stated that they don't believe that that intersection is at F. So we're going to continue to work on that intersection and see where it ends up, but we think we need more recent data from Caltrans. And then the missing intersection, since those add up to 64, is in both AM, PM, location was, the wrong intersection was counted, so we're redoing those, but neither of those intersections are expected to be below their threshold.
And the previous chart, no, I'm sorry. The 21 and 2 equal 23.
Yeah.
This one is 63 and 1, so at 65. Those don't add up.
Yeah, so the one in both the AM and PM is that San Pablo Avenue, John Muir Parkway intersection. Right now it's testing at F, but we think that's a data error. There's one intersection other than this.
It's not getting.
Yeah, one on 680 in San Ramon and one in Walnut Creek, where the counting firm counted the wrong location.
Okay, so is that going to be corrected by the time we have our meeting on the, whatever it is, the 15th? For you to, when you make this presentation there?
I hope to have that information then.
Okay, if you don't, you might need to put a little asterisk there or something.
Sure, sure.
Because again, this goes out to the public, and when they look at it, and
And it doesn't add up, yeah.
that's where I'm going.
Read the staff report.
Pardon me?
Read the staff report.
I know, but people don't read the staff report in the public. They look at charts and graphs and pictures.
Duly noted. So here's a summary of all the intersections. On the left, the chart with the blue and orange, that's just showing the distribution of level of service scores among the 65 intersections. You can see very few are at F. The majority are at C and D. But you know, if you use that intersection every day and it's at D every day, it probably feels like an F. But it's just showing you that, you know, we only have a few that are really operating at really deficient levels, but there are a lot of intersections whose threshold is already F, so they can't really exceed their threshold. And then on the right, that's a look at last monitoring cycle, 2015, compared to 2017. And you can see that the number of intersections that were at E and F in 2015 has dropped to 2017. In the AM, PM is about the same.
Could you do a graph that puts both years on the same so you didn't have to go back and forth? This is 2017 or 2015 right here.
So I don't know if I have a pointer, but on the blue,
Yeah.
yellow, and red, that is 2015 and 2017 side by side, AM on the top and PM on the bottom.
Oh, okay. Again,
Yeah, it's probably not.
it's not saying
super
that.
clear.
Yeah, because it looks like it's for 1 year cycle, so AM is the blue and PM is the red, correct?
Yes.
And what year is this?
That is 2017.
Okay, and then didn't the previous slide be 2015, or you didn't? No. Go back to the bars. Maybe you're just, okay, I thought you said something about 2015, levels C and D, those intersections have gone down for 2017.
Yeah, so that's on the right. This top, I wish I had a pointer.
I get what you're saying. I'm just saying that when you have two sets of data, sometimes it would be nice if it was just all on one and you put 4 different colors.
Gotcha.
Or slash 1 year and make the other solid, because it's easier to look at it side by side that way. This one, the greens and yellows and reds don't really talk that much. Again, it's a personal preference how I look at graphs.
I want it to be as clear as possible, so we'll make some adjustments. And here are those locations mapped for the AM. See the one up on Highway 4 and 80, and in the PM, same same situation. And you can see as far as the distribution, most of the low scores are in around Central County here, all along Ignacio and Treat, and I think most people who drive those would probably agree with that, both in the AM and PM. So here we've identified some near-term improvements that we've got planned that we hope will address some of these deficiencies. Whereas we have that exclusion study which says, hey, you don't have to do a deficiency study or a deficiency plan, but in place of that, we do have some actual improvements to the infrastructure. So included in that is the Interstate 680 southbound HOV completion and express lanes. That's basically getting the HOV through the 24 interchange in the southbound direction. The State Route 4 680 interchange phase 3, the Murillo Avenue to Port Chicago Highway widening, which is exactly where that one exceedance is. Opening of EBART, we think, could have some positive impacts on the Highway 4 congestion. Some operational improvements include the Innovate 680 suite of projects, which does include that southbound HOV project. The operational improvements on State Route 4, various arterial signal timing plans and intersection improvements around the county, and then the RM3 proposed toll plaza improvements on the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge.
When you talk about operational improvements on State Route 4, is that metering?
Metering is happening already.
So what are operational improvements?
Basically auxiliary lanes and some other improvements between Port Chicago Highway and Bailey Road. Basically between the interchanges, an auxiliary lane as we have on 680 down here, and some other improvements that we think would have some positive impacts there, especially east of 242.
And the reason I'm focusing on that, the major projects everybody understands.
Mm-hmm.
The operational, obviously we've talked about Innovate 680 and the arterial and the bridge, but when it says State Route 4 operational, you've got from the county line to the county line. And what does that mean since we've already widened 4? So
Yeah.
maybe in parentheses what some of those things are.
Yeah, and I should put the limits as well, because that is the title of the project, but it's very vague. Yeah. And then out of all this, the cities get access to a ton of data. So we provide all this data. What you're looking at are the intersection count sheets and then the level of service analysis sheets on the right. Cities love to use this data for their traffic studies, for anytime there's development going in. They have ready access to this. This will save cities thousands of dollars in hiring, counting firms, and level of service analysis. So we provide all this to the cities as soon as it's finalized. So that is my report, and I can certainly take any questions.
Mr. Hudson?
Gosh, anticipating. Good.
Well-
I know. Matt, you said you're talking about doing some recounts to get that 65. Was that El Cerro or Bollinger? Was it that?
It's at Alcosta. You know how it has that weird two intersections?
Yeah, I know how it is.
Southbound, they counted the wrong one.
I was surprised when I saw that the level of service from 15 to 17 went from F to E. And in fact, I was thinking maybe we should have David Durant recount those, because he'd tell you right, it didn't go from F to E, it went from F to G. But those are part of this report, I'm gathering. When I see the recount, I keep thinking, well, we've got Innovate 680. That's a big part of the direction we're going. Is it? I mean, were the counts that far off? Is it worth even doing? Is there an advantage to doing it, I guess is what I'm looking at.
Well, those two recounts, the one at Alcosta and the one over here at San Luis at North Main, they basically just counted the wrong leg of the intersection, and we need to report back a real score for those intersections. So.
Julie?
Yeah, I would say that probably on 680, what you're seeing for the improvement is the improvement created by those auxiliary lanes. That makes the main channel flow a whole lot more smoothly because you don't have the weave getting in the way there. And certainly the additional lanes are not hurting it. I had a question just to verify the northbound, it was on page 17 of the report, but it was talking about the Ignacio Valley Road at the northbound I-680 ramps in Walnut Creek. I think that's the northbound off-ramp onto Ignacio Valley Road. It's got to be. That's the only thing I can come up with. Because there is no northbound from Ignacio to 680. So it's got to be the off-ramp, right?
That would be the off-ramp.
Okay. That makes more sense that it improved in the AM peak, only because I think the people have been avoiding the construction in downtown Walnut Creek, so they go to a different off-ramp. By curiosity, and I need to double check, but were the off-ramps here at our favorite interchange intersection counted? The off-ramp northbound onto Treat? I don't remember reading it, but then I may have missed it and skimming them too.
C21 on page 20 or 532.
Yep, you're right. It is there. It is. Okay. I couldn't imagine we didn't. No, that's not it. That's the Buskirk northbound on-ramps.
It's
Isn't
that
it?
entire intersection. The northbound ramp turns into Buskirk once it crosses Treat.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
It's a weird configuration.
Okay. It's just really hard to imagine that it went to a B. I mean, our executive director knows what that intersection is, and that light, with the length of that light, it's really hard to imagine that that's accurate. But you know what? If it makes it look like it is and we comply and we don't have to do a,
It is the length of the signal that brings it down, actually, because that is factored into the calculation, the way the signal is timed. So,
Okay.
yeah.
okay, I don't want to have to do a report giving our reasons why it doesn't work, so, okay. But you don't feel like it's a B level when you're sitting at that light.
Okay, so this was,
I just had one other comment. In the last section of the report, you talk about potentially for the next time around using big data and more high-tech counts and other resources instead of hand counts. I'm all for that, and the interactive website as the report instead of a paper document, something that people can visualize, I think probably makes it much easier for people to understand. So I am 100% behind that. As you know, I want to go paperless as much as we can. So, and the more we can give people those interactive tools to play with and see how it actually works, I think the better off we are.
all righty.
Second.
Pierce moves, Hudson seconds. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to, I got screwed up on are we on number 6? That's what I thought. Thank you very much. Review and discussion of MTC's proposed community-based transportation planning, and this is Mr. Engelman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So about a decade ago, we did a series of studies in communities of concern, which are communities that have a high level of low-income households. And this is an initiative that came from MTC. It began as part of the Lifeline Transportation Network that MTC created in the early 2000s. And then there was another impetus called environmental justice, asking the question whether low-income communities were adversely affected by transportation improvements. And it became very clear from those two initiatives that we really had a lot of communities in the Bay region that needed special attention to determine how we could get households that don't have a car to work, how we could get more transit service to those communities, and how we could reduce the cost of that transit service for the low-income population. So we completed 4 studies, and they're listed on page 6.2. There was one in Bay Point in January 2007, one along the Monument Corridor in June 2006, one in downtown Martinez in January 2009, and one in the Richmond area in February 2004. And out of these studies came a lot of good ideas, many of which were implemented at the time. For example, on the Monument Corridor, increasing the frequency of the Route 111. We developed a shuttle bus program. Initially, it cost 50 cents, and then for a while it was free. Bike programs, improvements to transit shelters. A lot of good ideas came out of these studies as well. Auto loan programs and taxi service subsidies. And things have changed a lot since these studies were last done, so MTC is now initiating a second cycle of these studies, and we have the opportunity as the Congestion Management Agency to provide the program oversight for these studies. And MTC is proposing, as shown in Attachment A, the resolution that they considered in December but did not adopt. They actually want to hear from us first about what we think of this. They're proposing to allocate $1.5 million in funding from state transit assistance to the CMAs, and they're doing this by formula, and it's according to the county's low-income population and then their minimums and maximums. But in the end, Contra Costa would end up with $215,000 based on that formula. It's not a whole lot of money. These studies cost about $60,000 each at the time, and I think now they're going to cost a bit more to undertake. But MTC's proposal would put the Contra Costa Transportation Authority in the position of receiving that $250,000. We would then do a request for proposal to procure consulting services to perform the studies, and then we would have to decide, or you would have to decide, which areas should be studied. And that would be done in consultation with the local jurisdictions. And first we would re-identify the communities of concern based upon all the new criteria, and then consult with the cities to determine whether or not, and the transit operators to determine whether or not they think it'd be a good time to re-examine their situation. And probably the biggest change since this was last done is the ride-hailing services weren't around. And I remember when we did these studies the last time, there was some discussion about carpooling with smartphones already back then. A big concern was, well, low-income households don't have cell phones or have flip phones, and how do we deal with that? And so we want to kind of look at this in a new context. We have tremendous opportunities with flexible shuttle routes. We have tremendous opportunities with subsidized Lyft and Uber. And so we would receive $215,000. It's federal money, so it's not that easy to spend, and that's, I think, why they're putting the CMAs in charge of allocating the funds. And by going through us, we could alleviate the cities from some of the burdens of the federal requirements, and that we would provide them with a consultant, and they could then direct the study accordingly. So staff has looked at this. There are some provisions that we think are reasonable. There's a use it or lose it provision, and we have to start this thing within 9 months of receiving the funds. There's a local match of 10%, which can come from in-kind services from the staff, and local jurisdictions can help us out with that. And then that we need to prioritize how we do the plans, and the first on the list should be an area that never did get a plan, or where the plan is more than 5 years old. And so with that guidance, I think.
Well, these are all more than 5 years
I know,
old.
I know. So staff has reviewed the resolution, and if you direct us to do so, we would consult back with the MTC staff and just tell them through an email that we've brought this to you and that we believe that it's an acceptable arrangement. And unless you have any changes you want us to transmit to MTC, we'd go ahead and do that.
Mr. Harmon?
When I looked at this, I'm glad you gave me some instances of programs that were implemented as a result of the studies, because I kept thinking, we're spending money, and what are we spending money on? A lot has changed since then, not only the services, but also accessibility to the driver's license that wasn't there before. Now more people have the ability to get a driver's license, and we found that even with buses that more people we're losing bus ridership because people are carpooling together now because they can get a valid driver's license. The growth in East County especially has changed dynamically in the last 10 years. I looked at, there was a program for East Brentwood, and I kept trying to think where, as an area of concern, and I'm trying to think where in East Brentwood would that be right now as I look at the growth that's happened out there. Like I said, when I first looked at it, the first thing I could say, what are we spending money on? What do we hope to accomplish? There are so many ways for people to have access to mobility now that weren't there 10 years ago. And how can we help with this problem? So as long as we can have something to show for the money when we're done. I see we had an East Brentwood plan. We allocated $60,000. We never even started it. Obviously, we need a study to tell us if the problem still exists and what level that problem is still at. And so in that case, I guess I could see, taking the money, but not, like you say, $250,000 doesn't go too far. And I'm sure those studies will be a little more expensive this time around than they were last time. As long as we don't overcommit ourselves and make promises that we can't match, and get a constructive result from this that shows where we can lend assistance to, I can agree to work with it, but without those types of those assurances, I don't even know if it's really worth going after the dollars for.
Mr. Hudson?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing till I read this line, CCTA is responsible for implementing the study effort. As a CMA, you're kind of, if I'm reading that right, we're stuck with doing it one way or the other. You can do the study without the money. And then, anyway, every time I read something like this, I keep thinking, is there another way? Because $250,000.
15, not 50.
15.
Well, I'm trying to squeeze a little more out of it. And I'm wondering, Ramus here came before us trying to do some plan of mobility or whatever with the three Tri-Delta CCTA, not CCTA, but County Connection and WICDAC. And I'm wondering if there was some way to piggyback with that to actually get some value out of it. Because at $215, you're not going to be able to do these four. I mean, is there something going to come out of this other than what we already know? Lyft and Uber are going to help, or they're not going to help, or, and so shuttles are the fastest growing thing out there. We found that out from the study that on the other thing we're on together. But I don't know how to get around it if you're responsible for it.
Ms. Pierce?
I guess my question is, can we do some limited updates to the existing plans? I mean, we haven't identified a whole lot of areas that weren't already identified. Is there a way to do some updating of those based on new information without doing a full-blown new study, and then maybe have some of the money to start an implementation plan? Because it seems to me we're a whole lot better off just updating what we've got and putting money into actually getting things done. The Monument Shuttle that that Transpac helps to pay for out of our, what is it, our Line 21 monies? Is that what it is, Peter? It seems to me it does a tremendous amount. And the ability to have those shuttles that run from these particular areas to the county hospital and that area, I think probably do a lot of good. We're going to have BART out to the Pittsburgh area now, and even into Antioch to help serve some of those folks for transportation. A lot of them, and maybe part of it is a program to educate some of these low-income communities of concern about the reduced fare tickets that they can get for BART and other means of transportation. Because I think with sometimes the language barriers, others they don't know that they exist. And maybe an education program to help with that so that they can use the services that are already there might be a better way to spread the money. We can't run a whole lot more bus routes and things like that, and they wouldn't get used anyway. But specific shuttles, voucher programs, discount tickets that they already qualify for if they knew how to fill out the forms. Or, if we did a fair, a Saturday gathering to show people right there in their neighborhood, how do you sign up for it? And you get folks out there to do that. I don't know if you can do that or not, but it just seems to me that writing 4 more plans doesn't make any sense. Updating 4 plans and doing something makes more sense to me. My 2 cents.
And to piggyback on, I actually wanted to say that I would like to look at our budget to help augment this so that we get a robust, whether it's adding on, reviewing, updating, or what have you, because it makes no sense. First of all, we have to use this money for what it's intended. It can't go for that. But there's, at least in the Concord Monument, there are some very effective community-based organizations that I know that there is outreach, and we wouldn't have to be reinventing it. So that's down the road. But it just seems to me if we're going to do this, it shouldn't be a half-hearted effort, and you can substitute another word for hearted in there, that if we're going to do it, let's do it. And I like Julie's idea of updating or what have you, if you can come back or let MTC know that. But I'd even like us to look at some of our budgeted dollars to help augment this so that we do get something that actually tells us where we are in 2018, because basically the most recent one is 9 years old. And as Kevin said, we've got some communities out in East County. So if we're going to do it, I would like to at least come up with a product that's useful. I'm not saying that the other products weren't useful, but given the changes that have happened in this last decade, and most people do have smartphones, whether they're low income or not. They'd rather have that because that connects them to a bunch of services. And so I think that we can assume that people are getting their information through those. So I don't know if that's helpful to staff as they move forward. I'm with Dave. I mean, you use it or you lose it, so let's use it, but let's use it the way that best serves this agency.
Well, the thing I'm remembering about it is that these 4 areas were identified as areas of concern, and my speculation would be, without knowing the facts myself, that each of those 4 areas is still an area of concern.
Mm-hmm.
No question.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's an
So-
additional or 2 areas.
There may be, but these are the ones that were identified in this particular process. I'm wondering if we didn't just have the RTPCs identify a project that could be done, that could be identified, that they would identify that would work well in their particular area of concern. and then present it to CCTA for, a very simple approval that could then be implemented as the four. And if two of them happen to be the same project, so be it, that's fine.
The problem is this money can only be used for studies, it can't be used for programs, so.
Oh, okay, but that.
But after,
still
that's
isn't
why
your
I'm saying,
statement.
let's get a robust study out there, whether it's
But
building
it
on.
was supposed to be for the four areas of concern, and all of the things that you identified. For example, while they sound quite worthy, that don't do anything for West County.
I didn't identify anything.
That the various that were identified,
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean.
or
Let's,
whichever ones were just discussed here tonight. So,
so Peter, Martin, can we look at a scope of work that does begin with what we have and build on it from there, as opposed to going back and reinventing the wheel?
Certainly, I mean, at this point, we're simply telling MTC, yes.
We want the money.
We'll gladly take your $215,000. There's a lot of work to be done, and this will be done in close coordination with Peter and his work on the mobility management plan and the
So you would bring this
concepts
back after,
and this will be brought back many times, but the studies themselves, we're not going to be able to do, I'll tell you right now, we're not going to be able to do all 5 or 6 areas. We're going to have to prioritize, we're going to have to select. We're not going to be able to select a project and spend it on a project. It's for a plan. And the plans, MTC specifies in their resolution, these plans are residentially driven. We go out and talk to the communities, and we find out, is the monument corridor, do 18% of the households still not have cars? We need that information. The changes in ethnicity in those corridors between 1990 and 2000 were very significant. We want to find out if those trends are continuing or stabilized or where it's going. And so these studies are from the ground up. We go out to the communities with interpreters. Many of the participants in the community events that I attended did not speak English, and we brought interpreters. And we're also working with a population where, in the case of the Monument Corridor, 44% are below the poverty line as defined by MTC. So it's a significant effort to do one of these studies. We can certainly try the update strategy as Commissioner Pierce has proposed, but I think we're still going to need to go out and do the groundwork, compare the statistics to where they were in 1990, 2000, and then talk to the community about what their issues are and what their needs are, because those too may have changed.
is that what the
Since-
215 is spent on?
Yes.
Is going out to these communities?
A big part of it is going out and finding out what they need.
So where is
And then-
the consultant?
And then formulating a proposed plan of improvements that can help them out. And it could be anything from giving them a smartphone and a lift subsidy to improving a bus stop. So
Okay,
it's a more comfortable place to rest.
Let me ask it this way,
So-
Martin. You've got 4 areas. They were done in different years, 215,000. When would you come back and we would select, do you need to have a selection and a decision on which community to go to spend the 215, or do you take the 215 and go out to these 4 areas and then come back to us with ideas on which one gets programming?
Well, we would come back to you in the spring and tell you what our options are.
I'm not understanding options.
As
Which
staff, we could formulate options on how to, on the approach to this, on how we approach it.
would you still be
And
planning on going to all 4 communities?
I don't think we'll be able to do that unless we were to significantly augment the funds.
Okay,
with
so you'll be
Measure J.
coming
So
back and talking about whatever preliminary work you've done, which is the spending of this 215, or it won't be?
It won't involve any spending of the
Okay,
215.
just staff's gonna
An
go-
approach, yes.
And you'd go and get some preliminary data from each of these communities, correct?
We won't be able to go that far.
You're just going to come back with a concept of how to move forward,
How to move
the
forward, right.
process.
And we don't get the money till the fall anyway. So.
Okay, that's fine.
We're basically telling MTC in this item that we are willing to take on the role as the program manager for the 215,000 in
Well, when I
community-based
first,
transportation plans.
to only get 14%, it didn't seem quite right, even though I know it's based on, I guess, population of people living in lower communities. But, all right, so I think our attitude is we at least should say we want the money. Go forth and get us some buckaroos. Moved by Pierce, seconded by Romick. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. All right, so we're now on to authorizing the execution of the San Pablo Avenue Corridor Study Project Charter. Hasn't this been to us before?
The charter hasn't, but the
Okay.
study has. So basically, as you may remember, last year, you approved funding a two-county multimodal corridor study of San Pablo Avenue. As you know, it runs between Alameda and Contra Costa County. ACTC, our sister CMA, came up with the idea for this study and asked us to join. You approved spending $200,000 of Measure J planning funds on it. WICTAC is chipping in $50,000, and ACTC is putting in $1.5 million. But they have this Measure BB that gives them a few more dollars. So basically, what we've got here for you tonight is a charter for the project that they're asking the cities and agencies involved to sign, and it just really just defines the roles and the process for the study. It identifies ACTC as the lead agency of the project, but we and WICTAC are identified as supporting agencies because we are funders. They have brought in CCTA and WICTAC staff kind of into the fold to help plan the projects, but they are the lead agency. But what we've tried to make this charter do is make sure that it addresses concerns that may happen on the Contra Costa side of things. So what we made sure was in there was that if any decision points, at a decision point, if there were disagreement on how it would affect Contra Costa, that would be elevated to an executive level team who would kind of debate that and then pass it off to the CMA that it's affected. So anytime there's a decision where the TAC hasn't come to full agreement, or there's the level of impacts are assumed to be significant on one side of the county line or the other, it would be elevated. So there would be an executive level team that would be an in-between body, and the TAC has already been identified. We've had our first meeting in December. There's 7 cities involved, 3 in Contra Costa, El Cerrito, Richmond, and San Pablo, and then 4 on the Alameda side, Berkeley, Emeryville, Albany, and Oakland. And then the transit agencies and WICTAC would be the signees on the project charter. But basically, it really sets a vision for the project and spells out the roles of each participating agency. So we're asking you tonight to recommend our executive director signing the charter, and we will of course report back to you on the progress of the study, and it should run throughout 2018, wrapping up in early 2019.
Ms. Abelson, did you want to make the motion?
I so move.
Moved by Abelson, seconded by Hudson. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Wonderful. Thank you very much. We will be back for our next planning committee meeting in February, but we'll all see you on the 15th for our full authority meeting. Oh, I'm sorry. I went to the packet, and I'm at the end of the packet. So let's go back up to the top at the agenda. I try to keep them both before me, but, well, here, Mr. Hudson, thank you. Do we have other business?
Well, then what the heck?
The meeting is adjourned. Dave, you're going to be the death of me
No,
yet.
it was Randy, threw me under the bus.
What did I say? Nothing. The next meeting is the 17th.
I'm sorry, the 17th, you're correct. Thank you.
Oh, see, he was doing something.
I just said
He was
17th.
waving. He was,
No, I just said the 17th.
No, thank you.
you get me in trouble, Randy.
You do that all on your own.
Pretty dang good at it.
Oh, I said it back to you.
What is that date again, Randy?
I mean, I'm happy to sign it again, but
No, Maui.
February something, I'll get back to you.
All right,
No, I did it, I was like.
I might do that one. Let's see him.
Maybe it didn't go through.
Huh?
Sign it anyway, just in case.
Yeah, mine was.
I got all four.
Yeah.
You got it this time?
See, this is